Chapter 1. Self-help. National and individual. Daily experience shows that it is energetic individualism which produces the most powerful effects upon the life and action of others, and really constitutes the best practical education. Schools, academies, and colleges give but the merest beginnings of culture in comparison with it. Far more influential is the life education daily given in our homes, in the streets, behind counters, in workshops, at the loom and the plow, in counting houses and manufactories, and in the busy haunts of men. This is that finishing instruction as members of society, which Schiller designated the education of the human race, consisting in action, conduct, self-culture, self-control, all that tends to discipline a man truly, and fit him for the proper performance of the duties and business of life, a kind of education not to be learned from books, or acquired by any amount of mere literary training. With his usual weight of words, Bacon observes, that studies teach not their own use, but that is a wisdom without them, and above them, won by observation. A remark that holds true of actual life, as well as of the cultivation of the intellect itself. For all experience serves to illustrate and enforce the lesson, that a man perfects himself by work more than by reading, that it is life rather than literature, action rather than study, and character rather than biography, which tend perpetually to renovate mankind. Biographies of great, but especially of good men, are nevertheless most instructive and useful, as helps, guides, and incentives to others. Some of the best are almost equivalent to Gospels, teaching high living, high thinking, and energetic action for their own and the world's good. The valuable examples which they furnish of the power of self-help, of patient purpose, resolute working, and steadfast integrity, issuing in the formation of truly noble and manly character, exhibit in language not to be misunderstood, what it is in the power of each to accomplish for himself, and eloquently illustrate the efficacy of self-respect and self-reliance in enabling men of even the humblest rank to work out for themselves an honorable competency and a solid reputation. Great men of science, literature, and art, apostles of great thoughts and lords of the great heart, have belonged to no exclusive class nor rank in life. They have come alike from colleges, workshops, and farmhouses, from the huts of poor men and the mansions of the rich. Some of God's greatest apostles have come from the ranks. The poorest have sometimes taken the highest places. Nor have difficulties apparently the most insuperable proved obstacles in their way. Those very difficulties, in many instances, would ever seem to have been their best helpers, by evoking their powers of labor and endurance, and stimulating into life faculties which might otherwise have lain dormant. The instances of obstacles thus surmounted, and of triumphs thus achieved, are indeed so numerous, as almost to justify the proverb that with will one can do anything. Take, for instance, the remarkable fact, that from the barber's shop came Jeremy Taylor, the most poetical of divines. Sir Richard Arkwright, the inventor of the spinning jenny and founder of the cotton manufacture. Lord Tenterden, one of the most distinguished of Lord Chief Justices. And Turner, the greatest among landscape painters. No one knows to a certainty what Shakespeare was. But it is unquestionable that he sprang from a humble rank. His father was a butcher and grazier. And Shakespeare himself is supposed to have been in early life a woolcomer, whilst others aver that he was an usher in a school and afterwards a scrivener's clerk. He truly seems to have been not one, but all mankind's epitome. For such is the accuracy of his sea phrases that a naval writer alleges that he must have been a sailor, whilst a clergyman infers, from internal evidence in his writings, that he was probably a parson's clerk. And a distinguished judge of horseflesh insists that he must have been a horse dealer. Shakespeare was certainly an actor, and in the course of his life played many parts, gathering his wonderful stores of knowledge from a wide field of experience and observation. In any event, he must have been a close student and a hard worker. and to this day his writings continue to exercise a powerful influence on the formation of English character. The common class of day labourers has given us Brindley the engineer, Cook the navigator, and Burns the poet. Masons and bricklayers can boast of Ben Jonson, who worked at the building of Lincoln's Inn, with a trowel in his hand and a book in his pocket, Edwards and Telford the engineers, Hugh Miller the geologist, and Alan Cunningham the writer and sculptor. Whilst among distinguished carpenters we find the names of Inigo Jones the architect, Harrison the chronometer maker, John Hunter the physiologist, Romney and Opie the painters, Professor Lee the Orientalist, and John Gibson the sculptor. From the weaver class have sprung Simpson the mathematician, Bacon the sculptor, the two Milners, Adam Walker, John Foster, Wilson the ornithologist, Dr. Livingstone the missionary traveler, and Tannahill the poet. Shoemakers have given us Sir Cloudesley Shovel the great admiral, Sturgeon the electrician, Samuel Drew the essayist, Gifford the editor of the Quarterly Review, Bloomfield the poet, and William Carey the missionary. Whilst Morrison, another laborious missionary, was a maker of shoelace. Within the last few years, a profound naturalist has been discovered in the person of a shoemaker at Banff, named Thomas Edwards, who, while maintaining himself by his trade, has devoted his leisure to the study of natural science in all its branches, his researches in connection with the smaller crustacea having been rewarded by the discovery of a new species, to which the name of Prunus edwardsi has been given by naturalists. Nor have tailors been undistinguished. John Stowe, the historian, worked at the trade during some part of his life. Jackson, the painter, made clothes until he reached manhood. The brave Sir John Hawkeswood, who so greatly distinguished himself at Poictiers, and was knighted by Edward III for his valour, was an early life apprentice to a London tailor. Admiral Hobson, who broke the boom at Vigo in 1702, belonged to the same calling. He was working as a tailor's apprentice near Bonchurch, in the Isle of Wight, when the news flew through the village that a squadron of men of war was sailing off the island. He sprang from the shopboard, and ran down with his comrades to the beach, to gaze upon the glorious sight. The boy was suddenly inflamed with the ambition to be a sailor. And springing into a boat, he rowed off to the squadron, gained the admiral's ship, and was accepted as a volunteer. Years after, he returned to his native village full of honors, and dined off bacon and eggs in the cottage where he had worked as an apprentice. But the greatest tailor of all is unquestionably Andrew Johnson, the present President of the United States, a man of extraordinary force of character and vigor of intellect. In his great speech at Washington, when describing himself as having begun his political career as an alderman, and run through all the branches of the legislature, a voice in the crowd cried, "From a tailor up." It was characteristic of Johnson to take the intended sarcasm in good part, and even to turn it to account. "Some gentleman says I have been a tailor. That does not disconcert me in the least. For when I was a tailor I had the reputation of being a good one, and making close fits. I was always punctual with my customers, and always did good work." Cardinal Wolsey, Defoe, Akenside, and Kirke White were the sons of butchers. Bunyan was a tinker, and Joseph Lancaster a basket maker. Among the great names identified with the invention of the steam engine are those of Newcomen, Watt, and Stephenson. The first a blacksmith, the second a maker of mathematical instruments, and the third an engine fireman. Huntingdon the preacher was originally a coal heaver, and Buick, the father of wood engraving, a coalminer. Dodsley was a footman, and Holcroft a groom. Baffin the navigator began his seafaring career as a man before the mast, and Sir Cloudesley Shovel as a cabin boy. Herschel played the oboe in a military band. Chantrey was a journeyman carver, Etty a journeyman printer, and Sir Thomas Lawrence the son of a tavern keeper. Michael Faraday, the son of a blacksmith, was an early life apprentice to a bookbinder, and worked at that trade until he reached his 22nd year. He now occupies the very first rank as a philosopher, excelling even his master, Sir Humphrey Davy, in the art of lucidly expounding the most difficult and abstruse points in natural science.